The history of Nintendo's video games, whether it be movies, toys, most importantly, video games and their consoles, Nintendo is a household name known around the world for their entertainment values. Beginning in 1898, Fushiro Yamauchi started making and selling playing cards in Japan, officially creating the Marufuku Company in 1947, changing to the Nintendo Playing Card Company in 1951, and the Nintendo Company in 1963. They first started making video games and arcade games in 1977. In 1977, at home, we would see the release of the TV games 6, 15, and 112. 6 and 15 being Pong games, and 112 being a racing game played with the Joy-Con for a two-player experience or a single-player experience using the steering wheel. In the 1980s, Nintendo would fill a need for the portable game system with the Game & Watch, porting many of their classics onto it and making the company very profitable through the 80s. In 1982, we would also see the release of their first mascot game, Donkey Kong. Shigeru Miyamoto, the father behind Donkey Kong, Mario, or Link from The Legend of Zelda, and many, many others, is responsible for many of Nintendo's creative innovations over the past 40 years. We will go over some of them here shortly. In 1983, we would see the release of the Famicom, or the Family Computer System, in Japan, and after wild success, trying to port this into the American market was very hard. In 1983, we would see the video game crash in North America, so instead of immediately releasing a at-home console, we would see the Versus system released in arcades across America, exposing Americans to the hardware and games of the Famicom system. Repackaging it into the Nintendo Entertainment System, it was released in 1984 to wild success. Released with Super Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt, we would also see titles afterwards like The Legend of Zelda, Punch-Out!, and Mega Man with the NES. Moving into the 90s, Nintendo would continue to fill a need for the portable market with the Game Boy and the at-home market with the upgraded Nintendo 64. We would also see companies like Sega start competing in the at-home market with their Genesis, but also competing in the mascot market with Sonic the Hedgehog. We would see characters like Mario enter the 3D world for the very first time, and games like Pokemon for the Game Boy, creating a collection addiction for many, many kids of all ages. In 1997, we would see Xbox, or the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2, and moving into the early 2000s, we would see the Game Boy Advance, an upgrade of the Game Boy, and the GameCube, pretty much an upgrade of the N64. Using new hardware, listening to game makers and gamers alike, Nintendo would simply upgrade their consoles and trying to stay away from the current console race. We would see Mario pick up various sports items, whether it be a golf club, tennis racket, or even putting soccer cleats on, and seeing Metroid from the very first we're seeing our character from the very first Metroid game enter the first-person shooter genre with Metroid Prime and Metroid Prime 2, Nintendo was willing to innovate and gamers were willing to try it. Moving into the early 2000s, Nintendo took the accessibility to the very next level. The DS being the best-selling Nintendo console of all time, having two screens, and again adapting on the portable game market, trying to steer clear of the very competitive market that Microsoft and Sony were competing in with the Xbox and PlayStation. After that, again with the accessibility, creating the Wii with motion controls being the second best-selling Nintendo console of all time. Moving into the Wii U and the later years, a complete failure on Nintendo, actually putting them in the red for the very first time. Listening from their mistakes, and the lessons from Hiroshi Yamauchi, the president for 52 years at Nintendo, and approved pretty much everything that they made and everyone they hired. Anything that Nintendo came out with in his time was approved by him. Anyone that they hired, anything that they made, anything that they did. Whether it be sheer luck or his just will to approve the next great thing, Nintendo was able to make it into the video game era. Visions that would inspire Nintendo to create generations of gamers. Looking at the Wii, he was quoted saying, "I would like to make a console that my mom would play." And that paid off. We would see the Nintendo DS create the new Super Mario Bros., which was a clone of the original Super Mario Bros., and the Wii Sports, which was 5 amazing sports that I could play with most controls with my friends and family. Moving into 2014 to 2017, we would see Nintendo try new things once again into the Amiibo collection line, collectibles that would have new perks that I could use with my Wii U. We would also see mobile ports such as Super Mario Run or the amazing Pokemon Go, and we would also see their very new console, the Nintendo Switch, an at-home and portable game system that could compete with the current gen market. Nintendo would pave their way into competing with this market with not hardware or amazing graphics or anything like that. They would compete by trying to get into gamers' homes who already have those consoles, but also everybody else's home, making games that were super accessible in the 2000s, making consoles that were super user-friendly, and making consoles that everybody would want to try. In 2018 to the present, we would see games like Breath of the Wild or the Super Nintendo World recently opened in Orlando, and even the Switch 2, which was announced this past year, which is a port upgrade with new games and better hardware. Nintendo is a flagstaff company with a long list of iconic games and consoles. They have a century under their belt of knowledge, game making, and entertainment values, and they continue to do strong to this day. I hope you learned something new about your favorite game character or even thought back to a wonderful memory from one of these games. Thank you for listening.